Hi, I'm Don Simmons. Merry Christmas. Today I want to talk about going beyond Santa. What if some of the most meaningful lessons about generosity at Christmas don't come from the North Pole, but from a real follower of Jesus who lived more than 1,700 years ago? When we look behind the legends, behind the red suit and the flying sleigh, we discover a remarkable man, St. Nicholas of Myra. Not a fairy tale figure, but a courageous disciple. Not a seasonal mascot, but a faithful steward whose life still speaks to us today about how we should use the resources that God has entrusted to us. You see, Nicholas was born in the late 200s in what now is Turkey. When he was still a young boy, tragedy struck his family. Both his parents died, leaving him a meaningful inheritance. But here's the part rarely told. Nicholas didn't see his wealth as something to preserve or to flaunt or to accumulate. He saw it through the lens of Scripture as a trust from God to be used to bless others. The Apostle Paul captures this heart in 1 Timothy chapter 6, where he writes, "Command those who are rich in this present world not to be arrogant, nor to put their hope in wealth, which is so uncertain, but to put their hope in God, who richly provides us with everything for our enjoyment. Command them to do good, to be rich in good deeds, and to be generous and willing to share. In this way, they will lay up treasure for themselves as a firm foundation for the coming age, so that they may take hold of the life that is truly life." Nicholas lived these verses long before they were stitched on Christmas pillows. One of the earliest stories about him tells of a poor father with 3 daughters and no dowry. Without it, the daughters faced a future of slavery. Quietly, under cover of night, Nicholas slipped bags of gold through their window, enough to save them from certain slavery and to give them hope. This wasn't charity for applause. This was biblical stewardship, being rich in good deeds and willing to share. As he grew older, Nicholas became bishop and a defender of the faith. Under Emperor Diocletian, Christian leaders were beaten, they were imprisoned, and often executed. Nicholas refused to deny Christ, and he paid for his faith with years in chains. Yet even persecution couldn't extinguish Nicholas's generosity. Later, when false teaching threatened the church, Nicholas stood for truth even when it cost him relationships and comfort. He spent his entire life giving, his wealth, his voice, his courage for the sake of others. As I reflect on the life of St. Nicholas, I'm reminded of a few Christmases in our own family's journey. Amy and I learned early on that the greatest joy of the season isn't found in what we receive, but in what we quietly give. Several times over the years, we learned of families in deep need, parents who loved their children, but they simply couldn't afford gifts. So we went out together, shopped for toys and clothes, wrapped everything, and late into the night, then slipped out under the cover of darkness to deliver the gifts. We'd place the packages on the family's porch, ring the doorbell, and drive away before anyone saw us. No applause, no credit, just the holy joy of knowing that God had allowed us to be part of His provision for a family in need. Those were some of the most meaningful Christmas moments of our entire lives. So this Christmas, as we exchange gifts and hang stockings, let's remember the man behind the myth, a disciple who used his inheritance not to elevate himself, but to serve the poor. A steward who placed his hope not in wealth, but in God, who richly provides. A believer who stored up treasure for the coming age by loving people, not just indulging his own wants. Like Nicholas, who gave in secret to preserve the dignity of the poor. Who is one family or one person that you could quietly bless with sacrificial generosity this Christmas. I hope you enjoyed this message, and I wish you a very Merry Christmas.